Many Americans feel something they never expected: their towns are losing stores faster than they can adjust. The shift cuts deeper than headlines suggest. A pharmacy that once opened before sunrise now stays dark behind a pulled gate. A department floor that used to glow with weekend noise carries only the faint scrape of empty racks. Places that shaped daily routines, small comforts, and quiet habits fade one by one, leaving older shoppers to rethink errands that once fit easily into a morning. What once felt steady, a short drive for medication, a quick stop for basics, a familiar aisle with predictable prices, now demands more time, more fuel, and more strain. The past sits close enough to picture fuller parking lots, brighter corridors, softer crowds. Yet the present settles heavier with each closing sign. Tonight we walk through the weight of it all: 7 major retailers shutting down stores across America in 2025, and the burden those exits leave behind. 1. Walgreens. Walgreens plans to shut roughly 1,200 stores by the end of 2027, with several hundred closures falling directly inside the 2025 cycle. That single fact lands hard, because daily life becomes tougher the moment a pharmacy disappears from a neighborhood. Simple tasks stretch into long errands. Older shoppers who depend on steady access to medication face longer drives, longer lines, and longer waits. The loss does not feel dramatic. It feels tiring. It adds small pressures that stack faster than anyone admits. Across many regions, the shift becomes clear when errands turn into small journeys. A refill that once took 10 minutes begins to take half a day. A vaccine appointment now requires crossing town. Picking up bandages, cold tablets, or eye drops demands extra fuel and extra planning. People fold these changes into their week because they have no other choice, but the strain builds in the background. Families adjust schedules. Seniors rely more on rides. Caregivers juggle new routes. These adjustments do not make headlines. They just make life heavier. Walgreens explains the closures with a set of forces that have been building for years. Pharmacy reimbursement rates continue to fall, making it harder for stores to break even on the service that anchors the entire business. Labor costs climb as the chain tries to maintain staffing that meets safety standards, yet the revenue coming from each prescription often lags behind the expense of filling it. Operating the front of the store brings its own trouble. Sales of everyday items remain soft, and competition from larger retailers keeps prices tight, leaving thin margins with little room for mistakes. Shrink has become another major pressure point. More products sit behind locked cases, creating friction for customers and slowing down staff. The extra time needed to unlock goods during peak hours chips away at the pace of the store and pushes more shoppers toward online orders. Even strong locations feel this imbalance, but weaker ones feel it first and often permanently. Online pharmacy services add another layer. Digital refill platforms and mail order delivery pull volume away from brick-and-mortar counters. While convenient for some, these shifts reduce foot traffic in neighborhoods that still depend on in-person service. When fewer customers walk through the door, even a well-run store struggles to justify its own cost. Corporate teams describe the solution as footprint optimization, a term that looks clean in a report but translates into missing pharmacies on the ground. One more issue sits underneath the surface: commercial rent. Many Walgreens stores sit in strips where lease terms climb faster than the location's revenue. As rent resets push higher, individual units become too expensive to maintain. The company often closes stores after lease periods expire, removing locations, not because customers leave, but because the math no longer works. As these forces combine, entire pockets of the country feel the effects. Suburbs lose convenient counters. Rural towns lose one of their few pharmacy options. Urban blocks lose a store that once carried basic care, small groceries, and simple household needs. The distance between pharmacies grows, sometimes turning several neighborhoods into a single service zone. The burden falls unevenly, but it falls widely. By the time the closures spread through the year, the pattern becomes hard to ignore. People plan earlier, travel farther, and stretch their schedules to cover what used to be quick errands. A missing pharmacy does not cause chaos. It causes friction, the slow kind that grinds into everyday life. A glow from an old sign still hangs above some empty entrances, marking a familiar place that no longer carries the work it once held. To a CVS. Compared with the pullback at Walgreens, the retreat at CVS cuts even wider. Walgreens scales down to survive rising costs, but CVS steps back after spreading itself thin across too many new directions. Over the last few years, the company has removed more than 1,100 locations, and another 271 are marked for closure in 2025 alone. The shape of the map changes again, and the space between pharmacies stretches farther than many communities can handle. Meanwhile, the reasons behind this downsizing follow a different path than Walgreens. CVS spent years pushing into large healthcare deals, buying insurance networks, and building clinics inside select stores. Those moves absorbed money, attention, and time. While the company expanded in one direction, the base of local retail counters slowly weakened in another. Store floors changed less often. Staffing thinned. Simple resets took longer to finish. Workloads piled up on fewer people. None of these choices were reckless, but each one nudged the chain away from the steady, dependable model shoppers were used to. Step after step, the shift became hard to hide. Front areas grew slower to restock. Seasonal aisles felt emptier. Pharmacy wait times crept higher. Hours changed more often, and some locations adopted shorter days that confused regulars. These are small signs, but they add up. A former analyst put it plainly, health and retail can support each other, but only if the retail side stays strong. CVS trimmed too many stores before customers were ready to move their habits somewhere else. His words carry no blame, only a reminder that a chain built on access needs to protect that access. Along the remaining stretch of the network, the impact shows itself in simple ways. Lines extend across the pharmacy floor at peak hours. People hold printed prescriptions while waiting under signs that list new operating times taped over old ones. One worker tries to cover the drop-off window and the pickup window, moving back and forth without pause. A row of red baskets sits stacked in the middle aisle because there are not enough hands to put them away. These scenes are not chaotic. They are tired. They tell the story of stores doing more than they were designed to do. Across these corridors of surviving CVS locations, the strain spreads outward. Neighborhoods lose the store they once counted on for fast refills. Routes between pharmacies stretch wider, turning short errands into afternoon trips. People who rely on same-day pickups face more uncertainty. Some towns find themselves depending on a single location that absorbs the workload of 2 or 3 old stores combined. Others must look toward neighboring cities to fill prescriptions that used to sit 5 minutes away. None of this brings panic. It just brings friction, the slow kind that wears into routines week by week. As the pattern widens through the year, the closures echo into places already dealing with tight budgets and long commutes. Families start reworking their schedules. One person handles grocery stops, another handles medication pickups. They check store hours before leaving the house because the times keep shifting. They add a few extra gallons of fuel into the monthly budget. They fold the distance into their lives because there is nothing else to do. These adjustments do not shout for attention. They settle in quietly and stay. As the year unfolds, the distance between old habits and new demands grows clearer. A chain that once offered close-by counters now leaves larger spaces between each red and white sign. The change does not point to failure. It points to a system rearranging itself in a way that makes everyday life feel heavier. By the time the last closures of 2025 take effect, the difference sits plainly on the map. Fewer stores carrying more weight and families spreading their effort across longer routes, doing their best to keep up with a chain that no longer sits just around the corner. 3 Rite Aid. It used to feel reliable, a longtime customer once said while standing outside her closed Rite Aid, looking at a building that would never reopen. Her words echo a larger reality. More than 2,000 Rite Aid locations have closed across multiple waves since 2020, with the final shutdown wiping out every remaining store by late 2025. That number gives shape to the loss. It shows a chain not shrinking, but disappearing. What happened here is not a mystery. It is a straightforward economic breakdown that played out slowly then all at once. From an economic view, the fall of Rite Aid begins with momentum slipping out of the business long before the final closures. The chain carried a heavy debt load for years, and that debt grew more expensive as interest rates rose. Store upgrades lagged behind competitors. Prescription volumes weakened in several regions. Front-end aisles brought in less revenue than projected. When a business with thin margins faces rising costs, shrinking sales, and long-running debt, at the same time the pressure compounds. That pressure left the company with little room to redirect its strategy. By examining the pattern, the structural problems become clearer. The company operated too many stores in low-yield markets, where the return could not cover long-term expenses. Lawsuits added another layer of financial drag, pulling resources away from reinvestment. Several rounds of restructuring bought time, but did not change the direction. Lease agreements in older properties locked the chain into obligations that no longer matched the revenue they produced. Digital transitions moved slower than customer behavior, leaving the company behind chains that adopted simpler, more flexible refill systems. Each issue could have been manageable on its own. Combined, they formed a weight the business could not carry indefinitely. Across multiple cycles, the numbers worsened. Eventually, the chain entered another bankruptcy round, and this time the exit path was final. All remaining stores would shut down by late 2025. A company that once ran more than 5,000 locations vanished from the national market. The disappearance is not symbolic. It is a shift in how many communities access basic care, and it opens space for other players to redraw the map. Under these pressures, the question turns toward what could have helped the chain avoid collapse. An earlier and sharper contraction into profitable regions would have reduced the financial drag. Fewer but stronger stores could have carried more stable revenue. A deeper focus on clinics and basic care partnerships might have expanded service volume at lower cost. Modernizing digital pharmacy tools sooner could have increased refill consistency. Better lease negotiation or strategic exits from high-cost sites might have cut overhead. None of these steps guarantee survival, but they form a group of moves that could have softened the fall. Toward a more stable model, alternative structures point to better outcomes. Some regional pharmacy cooperatives operate with lower overhead and tighter cost control. Mixed-use health hubs combine pharmacy service with predictable care visits, which stabilizes foot traffic. Smaller footprint stores with flexible inventory adapt faster to changing local demand. Online and in-store hybrids built around regular refill patterns reduce pressure on physical counters. These approaches work because they balance scale with sustainability. They grow where demand is steady and avoid stretching into markets that cannot support long-term operation. With Rite Aid gone, the landscape adjusts in uneven ways. Some areas pick up new competitors. Others rely solely on the remaining large chains. A few regions shift to smaller independent pharmacies that must handle more prescriptions than they expected. The change is not dramatic at first. It builds over time, showing how much weight a single chain once carried in the national system. So, what is the message here? Consumers should monitor the health of their local pharmacy network, plan refills early, keep a backup option in mind, and pay attention to which chains invest in stronger service rather than stepping back. Stability in basic care depends on early awareness and knowing when the ground beneath it starts to shift. $4 Tree, Family Dollar. After the pharmacies step back, the next hit lands on the people who can least afford another loss. The chains meant to serve the bottom rung now prepare to pull out as well, and the weight of that shift falls straight into homes already stretched to their limits. Later that morning, Michael sat at the kitchen table with yesterday's coffee warming under his hands. The local paper lay folded beside a half-finished bowl of cereal, and the headline grabbed him by the throat before he even turned the page. Dollar Tree to close nearly 1,000 Family Dollar stores across 2024 and 2025. He read it twice, then once more slower. A forklift operator at the warehouse down the highway. He had lived through enough months where the numbers barely worked. The cheapest store in town wasn't a convenience for him. It was the line that kept the budget from breaking. Under that small kitchen light, the worry moved through him first, heavy, even familiar. Laura stepped in from the hallway, tying her apron before her shift at the diner. She saw the way he held the paper, and she understood before he said anything. Their grocery envelope barely stretched through the week as it was. Family Dollar was where she found shampoo, dish soap, canned vegetables, and the cereal Evan liked when it went on clearance. Losing that store meant adding miles, adding fuel, adding compromises. She felt the shift before a word left his mouth. Across this block, their neighbors felt the same tremor creeping in. Families with one car, elderly residents counting their coins at the bus stop, mothers measuring the difference between a $3 pack of pasta and one that cost $1.25. The discount stores weren't pretty and they weren't orderly, but they kept life livable. Every closure chipped away at that fragile balance. By midday, Michael returned to the article, scanning for anything that hinted at a mistake. No such comfort waited. The reporter explained why the closures were coming thin profit lines, rising theft that stores couldn't contain, inflation pushing the cost of every item upward, shelves that couldn't stay full because supply shipments skipped entire weeks, buildings aging faster than they could be maintained. These chains were built on the idea that cheap prices would always hold. The world around them changed faster than they could adjust. As reality sinks deeper, the story broadened beyond his table. Some towns had already lost their only Family Dollar. Others found their Dollar Tree reduced to irregular hours and half-lit aisles. When a business built on affordability loses control of its cost structure, retreat becomes the only move left. The article didn't say it harshly. It simply laid out the truth: the model couldn't withstand the strain anymore. From the living room doorway, Evan and Riley listened without meaning to. Kids always do. They heard Scrap's closing drive, farther gas budget. They didn't understand the weight behind those words, but they recognized the silence that followed them. Through each closure wave, the community around them bent under the added pressure. Shoppers compared prices with tired voices. People walked longer distances because a corner store with higher markups was the only thing left open. Buses filled earlier. Paychecks thinned sooner. Every errand demanded more planning and more hope. By the time evening settled, the family gathered near the apartment doorway. Streetlights flickered against the pavement outside. Michael leaned on the frame. Laura wrapped her arms around herself. Evan and Riley stood between them, restless but quiet, sensing something larger than the day. They looked out together, not toward a specific answer, not toward a promise, not toward any clear solution. They looked forward because that was all they could do, hoping for something they couldn't name, waiting for a future they could only guess at. 5 Big Lots. A store built on bargains can't outrun the cost of staying open. That truth sets the stage for Big Lots, a chain, once pitched as the perfect middle ground, cheaper than full-price retail, steadier than dollar stores, now pushed into a corner by a market it can't hold back anymore. At the same time, the numbers came out. Big Lots recorded more losses quarter after quarter and announced its plan to shut down roughly 100 to 150 stores through 2025. The closures are not sudden. They follow years of dropping foot traffic, rising operating costs, and the slow erosion of the closeout supply deals that once kept prices low enough to draw people in. A chain meant to be the pressure valve for working families is now feeling the pressure itself. Along the wider market, the forces cutting into Big Lots are simple but heavy. Rent in many of their big box spaces rose faster than sales could keep up. Inventory shipments became unpredictable, with whole categories arriving late or not at all. Suppliers no longer offered deep discount closeout goods in large quantities because their own excess stock shrank. Store layouts built for old demand began feeling too large and too costly. Energy bills climbed, payroll costs increased. Each factor added a little more strain until the model no longer worked the way it once did. Within these rows, the decline became visible long before the announcements. Wide aisles carried scattered furniture pieces that looked more like leftovers than deals. Tall metal shelves had missing sections as if someone had removed pages from a book. Clearance signs curled at their edges from age. A few seasonal displays stood in the wrong month because the layout change hadn't been finalized. The hum of overhead lights echoed across empty checkout lanes where customers once lined up with carts full of low-priced household goods. Across this tier of the retail world, Big Lots served a group often unseen in economic reports. Families who are not the poorest but far from comfortable. People who make just enough to cover rent, car insurance, and groceries, but not enough to absorb sudden price spikes. Parents buying school supplies one paycheck at a time. Older couples stretching fixed incomes to prepare for holidays. Workers who needed a place where furniture storage bins, blankets, small appliances, or kids' items didn't require a full day's paycheck. For them, Big Lots filled the space between survival shopping and everyday living. Not luxury, not bare essentials. Just the middle ground, the place where a family could tighten their budget without stripping life down to nothing. When that middle ground breaks apart, the gap widens in both directions. Some are pushed toward higher-priced stores that take bigger bites out of their paychecks. Others fall back on the cheapest remaining options, sacrificing quality, durability, or convenience because there is no other lane left open. Across the remaining stores still open, the mood reflects the slow shift. Shoppers walk through with lists that already look revised. They double-check tags. They pick up items, put them back, then stand quietly deciding if the small savings still matter enough to justify the drive. The few employees on shift do their best to hold the aisles together, but the weight of a shrinking footprint hangs over the space. This is what it looks like when a middle-tier safety valve loses its strength. By the time doors shut in each affected location, the impact spreads beyond the store itself. Local bus routes lose a common stop that once connected neighborhoods to cheaper household goods. Small apartments lose a place where renters could find a couch, a mattress pad, or a storage shelf without overspending. Parents lose a fallback store for replacing broken items at prices that didn't break the week's budget. The closures don't spark headlines, they just create a quiet gap that families have to step around. By the time another set of lights goes dark, the parking lot sits still under the dusk sky. The last customers pull away. The automatic doors lock themselves for the final time, and the space that once gave families a little breathing room becomes just another empty box waiting for whatever comes next. 6 Macy's. The escalator kept moving even though no one rode it, a machine going nowhere in a mall that once carried a generation upward. The stillness around it framed the truth Macy's could no longer outrun. Looking ahead into 2025, the company expects to close another 30 to 50 stores. The slow contraction of an institution that once defined the middle-class shopping experience has gained momentum, and the meaning of that decline stretches far beyond retail. Across the coming years, the loss of Macy's signals something quieter than collapse but deeper than inconvenience. For decades, the chain acted as a benchmark for middle-class identity. Families bought school outfits there because doing so meant we're doing okay. Holiday decorations came from aisles that felt like tradition. Wedding registries, work, clothes, prom dresses, these weren't just items. They were small rituals that stitched together the cultural fabric of an ordinary, stable American life. When a marker like that begins to fade, the ground beneath the middle class shifts with it. Under these shifting conditions, the economic drift behind Macy's becomes easy to trace. Mall traffic has fallen for more than 10 years. E-commerce carved out the predictable purchases that once kept department stores steady. Costs for running large multi-floor spaces rose while discretionary spending shrank. Apparel cycles sped up online but slowed inside malls. Younger families weighed down by rent insurance and student debt began buying seasonally only when absolutely necessary. A store built for browsing and annual traditions now faces shoppers who arrive with narrower budgets and highly selective needs. Macy's didn't fall behind because it miscalculated once. It fell behind because the world around it stopped matching the model it relied on. As habits evolve, the real question turns toward what the future looks like for the American middle class when a store like Macy's loses its place. Without shared shopping spaces, the social glue that once held communities together weakens. People stop meeting in the same aisles, comparing the same items, preparing for the same occasions. The middle class becomes more fragmented, less bound by a common set of rituals. Instead of one collective lifestyle, the next generation grows up with a patchwork of habits shaped by individual struggle instead of shared expectation. Looking ahead, spending becomes more cautious. Loyalty to mid-tier brands fades because stability itself becomes uncertain. Large purchases, furniture sets, coats for winter holiday outfits shift from "this is what a middle-class family does every year" to "we'll do it when we absolutely have to." Aspirational buying fades. Families no longer look to the future with the confidence that life will naturally rise step by step. The psychological middle class begins to shrink, even if the population numbers stay the same. Inside these fading halls, the erosion is already visible. Mannequins face empty walkways with signs from last season still draped behind them. A single associate stands at a vast perfume counter, built for a level of traffic that no longer exists. Clearance tables stretch across spaces once reserved for new collections. Music bounces off tile floors with no footsteps to soften the echo. This is not a disaster. It is the slow hollowing of a world that once felt familiar. Across the old anchor floors, the ripple extends beyond shoppers. Towns lose part-time jobs that helped young people and retirees supplement tight incomes. Holiday events that once brought families through the doors disappear. Suburban malls lose their center of gravity, turning whole wings into quiet passages people cross only when they need to, not because they want to. Property taxes shrink. Maintenance falls behind. The mall, once a symbol of middle-class comfort, becomes a shell of its former self. Before long, the red star above Macy's becomes more than a logo. It becomes a forecast, a symbol still shining, even as the space beneath it empties. And if the middle class continues drifting in the same direction, more anchors will dim, more rituals will fade, and more families will look around for markers that no longer exist. The future isn't loud or sudden. It's a quiet mall wing where the last light glows over a store that once held an entire way of life together. 7 Best Buy. More than 100 Best Buy locations have disappeared since 2020, and another wave is expected in 2025. The contraction cuts deeper than a corporate update. It signals a point where the country's relationship with technology no longer feels like progress because the families who once drove that progress can barely afford to keep up. Across a landscape shaped by tighter budgets and slower upgrade cycles, the decline of Best Buy is not just a retail event, it is a sign of a future that has stopped accelerating for the middle class. Projected closures tie directly to shrinking big-ticket sales, the rise of cheaper online competitors and households, delaying purchases they once made without hesitation. Within tightened budgets, every laptop, every TV, every washing machine becomes a question, not which one, but can we wait another year? The problem is not interest. People still want better devices, sharper screens, cleaner sound. The problem is the financial drag that follows them from paycheck to paycheck, slowing decisions that used to feel simple. Across long upgrade cycles, technology becomes something maintained, not replaced. A laptop meant for 4 years runs into year 7. A refrigerator hums unevenly, but still cold enough. A phone with a cracked screen carries on anyway. When wages flatten while tech prices rise, families shift from new to just enough. Purchases that once felt like stepping forward now feel like negotiating with necessity. The slow fade of Best Buy mirrors the slow fade of that optimism. For decades, the store meant more than merchandise. It was where kids touched the future through game consoles glowing under blue lights. It was where teenagers tested headphones they dreamed about buying someday. It was where parents compared appliances with the sense that better tools would help build a better life. Best Buy thrived because the middle class trusted that tomorrow would rise higher than today. A home full of updated technology was proof that progress had a shape, a sound, a screen. As expectations flatten, the aisles start to empty in ways numbers alone can't explain. Customers browse in person, then search online for the cheapest version. High-value items lose urgency. A 4-figure TV no longer marks a step up. A 3-digit appliance repair becomes the safer choice. Credit fatigue sets in, pushing families to avoid payments that stretch into a future they no longer view as steadily improving. Even households that once relied on yearly upgrades now measure every purchase by its strain rather than its excitement. Before the next wave of cuts settles in, the forecast becomes clear. Middle-income families will move toward refurbished and second-hand markets. Upgrade cycles may stretch 5 to 7 years. Technology will shift from a symbol of lifestyle to a tool of survival, something patched, protected, and prolonged. Innovations will still arrive, but fewer families will adopt them early. The future will stop feeling like a step forward and start feeling like something only certain households can access. When a store built around newness falls away, the emotional ceiling of the middle class lowers with it. In the aisles where the next decade once felt within reach, the erosion shows its shape. A quiet row of appliances stands under dim lights. Demo laptops remain unplugged because there is no need to power them. Clearance TVs glow with looping ads meant for crowds that never come. A single blue-shirt employee rearranges headphones to fill the gaps left by missing stock. The store is not broken. It is simply drifting into a slower world where progress no longer moves with the same confidence. Across tomorrow's households, the meaning settles when Best Buy backs away. It leaves more than empty space. It leaves a generation without a place to touch what the future used to look like. And at the end of one dim aisle, a row of darkened display screens reflects nothing but the empty floor. A reminder that the future is no longer something families walk in to reach for. The hardest truth running through all 7 stories is that none of these closures happened overnight. Each one slipped in quietly, shaped by years of shrinking budgets, rising costs, and the slow undoing of the spaces that once made everyday life feel steady. When pharmacies dim, when discount chains thin out, when big box stores step back, the burden doesn't fall on abstract maps or quarterly sheets. It falls on families who now drive farther, pay more, or go without. It falls on communities losing places that once anchored their routines. And it falls on a middle class trying to hold its ground, while the world beneath it changes faster than their paychecks. Before the next wave arrives, the only certainty we have is awareness. Stay alert. Pay attention to what closes, to what opens, and to what slowly fades without anyone saying a word.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.